on the recording. Well, welcome everybody. This is a truly significant moment. This is Black History Conversations. We're welcoming people from all over the world to find out more about our special subject for today. And I'm really delighted that we're able to have so many of you here with us today. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for you also to ask questions, discuss, but I'm just going to start the PowerPoint so you can see just where we're at. And with Black History Conversations, we start in a rather special way. So I've just mentioned to you that I'm here in Australia. So you'll realise that here we start things in meetings and things in quite a special way. But we're here today because I'm so grateful that Alex Renton and Dr. Christienna Fryar have joining us today, because it's been a very significant week when the members of the Church Commissioners Oversight Group have presented their recommendations, which I understand have been fully accepted. And these are this is about the Church of England's new fund to address its historical involvement in transatlantic chattel enslavement. And so, judging by the numbers of you who are here with us today, at 2 p.m. in the UK, but whatever time it is in your part of the world, 9 a.m., 9:15, I think, in Jamaica at the moment. Wherever you are, it's really brilliant that you've joined us. Please make sure that you put your email address into our chat. Now, because I'm in Australia, any activity is, we start with an acknowledgement. Country,
with the proper clinical check as to whether it is appropriate for you to have hormones.
Hang on a minute, we just need to find out who's having a little chat there. Right, keep your keep your mics off, and I'll start. Just go back to the PowerPoint.
So I will find the person.
Yeah, if you can, how it works. Well, I'm sure you'll work it out, Garrick. Oops, a daisy. Here we are. Right. So in Australia, when there's an activity being undertaken, country is acknowledged by a statement of respect. So I don't make any exception. And each time we do Black History Conversations, I like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I also acknowledge that there are still people around today who don't understand the implications of the actions taken by our European ancestors. I pledge to endeavour to try to help create better and more honest understanding of the injustices of the actions the European invaders, as perpetrators of abuse to so many over such an extended time. I also pledge to make the effort to understand this shared history that destabilised so many peoples and nations around the world in the centuries of colonialisation. So that's a personal acknowledgement for myself. And then, on behalf of Black History Conversations, we've had many discussions about this, and this is our current best version. That Black History Conversations acknowledges the injustices of the actions taken by the British and the other European countries that invaded and took possession of the islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, here at Black History Conversations, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Asia and Australia, and many other parts of the world in the centuries of colonialisation and ongoing exploitation. We also acknowledge that this has resulted in the destruction and destabilisation of so many nations, peoples and cultures. And we also recognise in Black History Conversations the important work of the International Decade for People of African Descent. And we've had some sessions where we've just concentrated on that. Now, this is a special session, a very special session, and we're going to make our introductions. But we have a colleague with us from Jamaica, Dr. Vivian Crawford. Vivian, are you just there now? Vivian? Because Vivian
Present, Principal, present.
Good, thank you. I'd like Vivian to ask, in the tradition of any meeting that you would have in Jamaica, could you start this meeting with a prayer, please?
Yes. Let us pray in reverence. And I pray the prayer that was left on the moon by Buzz Aldrin, given to him by James Dillett Freeman. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. Thank you very much indeed. So we've now done the formalities to get our Black History Conversation started, and I thank you all for your time there. If you want to make any comments about how we start our sessions, then you're very welcome to put a note in the chat. Okay, so Alex Renton and Christienna, wonderful to have you both with us. Off you go then. How are you going to tell us about this exciting development, which is of interest to so many?
Christienna, would you like to go first?
No, I'd like you to go first.
All right, I will in that case. Thank you very much, Liz, for having us both on, and thank you everybody, some of whom I know, for attending, and I hope we can go somewhere interesting today in conversation in what I think, you know, all of us who've worked and advised on this plan see as just the start of something which must involve everybody descended from those who were enslaved by the European nations and all the communities affected then and today. And I think Christine and I both, you know, as we said earlier, would really like to see this as a question and answer session. I think we're getting a bit of feedback. I hope I've posted in the chat a list of the recommendations that the oversight group has made to the Church Commissioners for the Church of England. And you can go to the website and see what those are if you don't know of them already. We need to make it clear that we are not the Church of England, and nor are we the Church Commissioners. Christina and I and our 12 colleagues were interviewed and appointed as independent people to gather evidence, to hear the views of those impacted by the history of enslavement, transatlantic chattel enslavement, and to make recommendations for the design and the operation and the ethos and even the theology of a fund that the church had already announced, the Church Commissioners had already announced, would start with £100 million that they'd pledged in recognition of a very specific piece of money that came to the Church Commissioners and has been used by them to pay all sorts of costs, including wages, ever since. And that money was directly came from investments in transatlantic chattel enslavement. So we produced these 41 recommendations. They have been accepted by the Church Commissioners, and we now will be watching as we hope these recommendations are taken forward to the setting up of a perpetual fund that will disperse money across globally to descendants of to communities descended from the or impacted by enslavement. I think I may leave it at that and hand over to Christienna. I mean, for you may have seen some of the newspaper reporting of the key things, the key messages from the fund. I think right at the top, what's come out of the announcement on Monday is the fact that in our recommendations, we reflected the views of everyone we consulted, and I think our own views as well, which was that the promise of 100 million was not enough, and that the church needed to do, and the church commissioners, I should say, needed to do more, and this should only be the start of something. Christienna, should I hand to you?
Sure, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here, for being interested, for the questions I already see coming into the chat, and for the conversation that we are about to have. And especially for those of you who are joining us either very early in the morning or very late at night, wherever you are, thank you for that. So I'm Christienna Fryar. Despite the spelling of my name, it is just pronounced Christienna. I'm a writer and a historian and a member of the oversight group. And I think there was a question in the chat that I'll just answer now, which is that there are no representatives of the church commissioners here with us today. So it's just Alex and I, and we are members of the oversight group, and we're speaking in our personal capacity. I think the only thing that I would add to what Alex has said is just a little bit of background as to sort of how or how the oversight group worked. We began in early August with a series of in-person and online meetings, and even the in-person meetings were hybrid. We quickly decided that there needed to be some form of engagement, some way of getting a sense from communities both in the UK and around the world of what they would like for like a fund like this to do, and some of their concerns about the fund. You'll see on the website link that Alex has posted in the chat. And Alex, if you could post that again, since I think some people have joined us since you posted. There is also a report that analyzes the findings of a questionnaire that went out that gathered responses from around the world. So for those,
he's got the £20 in there. So if he looks at his account at some point, yeah.
For those of you who are interested in seeing a little bit more about what we heard through that questionnaire, that report is available as well. And then we built kind of a model that we hope will be taken forward, proposed that to the church commissioners, as Alex mentioned, in November. So I think I will stop there. I think it's more important to hear from y'all than it is for me to keep talking. But again, really looking forward to the conversation, to the thoughts that y'all might have, concerns, and so on. So thank you.
Right, Garrick, would you like to come in?
Yeah. So this is essentially just the Church of England. There is no representation from any other church. I was thinking around the Catholic Church. Do we know what's happening there?
Yes, this is the Church of England's response. I think, you know, one of the intentions is that other institutions, and there are many that know that they profited from transatlantic chattel slavery, may see this as a model and may join in and may begin their own plans. I personally am a Scot, and my Scottish family were involved in the enslaving of African people, and the Church of Scotland has a lot to do as well. So we would hope that this is an example that can be taken up by other institutions, including religious ones.
And if I could add to that, in part because I'm always very keen to be sure that we are not necessarily allowing institutions to claim more credit than they should. This is actually even narrower than the Church of England. It is the church commissioners, which is the sort of a funding body that provides some of the money to the Church of England. They identified that there's a specific pot of money that was developed in, or that was built in the 1700s. And so, I would say, as someone who was keen to be sure that all institutions are taking full responsibility, that, from my perspective, there's still more for the Church of England to do here.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got Vivian Crawford's hand up, and also I'll come to you, Glenroy.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you, Christiana. And thank you, Alex. I'll be sending patties and jerk chicken for you both. I want to declare interest, ladies and gentlemen. I am a member of the Jamaica committee for our enslavement bodies, Reparation Council. And also, I am an Anglican. I'm a member of the committee. The committee, we met some members of the church commissioners last year. So I hasten to put on the table about the Brattle report, whether the Brattle report will have any link with the church commissioners oversight group, because Justice Patrick Robinson, a Jamaican who is at the International Court at The Hague, in the Brattle report, they say that the compensation is $100 to $131 trillion. And I am aware that the church commissioners, they are focusing on the Queen Anne's bounty. And I saw in the Wikipedia this morning that the church commissioners, instead of the 100 million, they are thinking of some $1 billion dollars, the latest figure, something to that effect. Yes, $1 billion. Instead of the 100 million to be spent, it could be $1 billion. Just some comments on what I just said. And before I hang up or stop speaking, I want to draw Alex's attention whether we would have seen the article in the Guardian newspaper of the 5th of July, 2023, about the innovation from Roselli's estate in St. Thomas, our own St. Thomas, Jamaica, where the 76 enslaved, they found out a way to use scrap iron, and it was patented by a Henry Court, a British financier in 1780. And that technique is why we have Crystal Palace, Kew Gardens today, and the Arches of St. Pancras Station. Of course, because they are, as Alex would remind us, our ancestors were half human and half animals. We had no rights. Just to ask if he's aware of that. So perhaps there is some reparation for Alex to get. Thank you.
Vivian, thank you very much. Perhaps I'll answer that specific and then hand over to Christina for the more complicated one. Yes, I did see that story about the development of a metal technique in Jamaica in that period, and the failure to acknowledge who had actually done the work. I was absolutely fascinating, and of course, just another story about so many things that people like my ancestors and have denied or stolen, but whether it's technology or spiritual ideas. But I wasn't aware that there was an association with the Roselle estate. But I always love talking to you anyway, and perhaps we could continue discussing that offline. It would be really interesting. I'd love to know more, and I hope to come to Jamaica again soon. Christina.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And now, Glenroy, I know you've got a point you want to make.
Should I answer Dr. Crawford's question first?
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Christina, yes,
please,
Christiana,
please.
yes.
Yep.
Christiana.
Christiana, where in Jamaica are you from?
My mother's from St. Thomas.
I don't believe. Where? What district?
Trinityville.
Oh my God. Wow, Teacher Keen. Teacher Keen taught your parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. Oh.
So to this question of money, certainly I can only speak for myself in terms of, you know, when I, you know, there was an application process for the oversight group. And, you know, I was clear in my application that the 100 million wasn't enough. I think we all, you know, rolled into those first sessions saying that the 100
Write
million.
it down, whatever comes out, and when you go to school, go.
And it was a constant theme in our discussion and deliberations. We then heard it wasn't enough from you know, all of the engagements. So, you know, this was a resounding chorus. And I think what I would say about the billion and the way that the billion is, or the idea around the billion, is that, first of all, it's my understanding that this that figure had already come up in some previous discussions before the oversight group was constituted, and had been discarded for whatever reason, but that it was a figure that had been, you know, milling around in discussion. And I think we certainly the way that I think about it is, it felt very important to me to be sure that the report, that our recommendations reflected that nobody in the room thought that 100 million was enough. And then also very important that since we had done those engagement sessions, and I think, you know, when you do that kind of engagement, people really trust you to relay what they have said fully to the people that you are that you are reporting back to. So again, it was important for us to indicate that as well. You know, but the church commissioners have, and those of you who saw the press conference or have seen some of the reporting, they have stated that they are, you know, they are sticking with their 100 million pound commitment over the next 9 years. They have a kind of triennial system. There is an opportunity for them to reevaluate that towards the end of that 9-year period. And so what the 1 billion figure is designed, or the hopes for that, is that amount will be reached via other partners, other investments, and then hopefully some additional money from the church commissioners. I am sure most of y'all will tell me, and I will agree that that is not enough. So you know, I'm not going to come here and tell y'all to be satisfied with this amount, because I'm not satisfied with this amount. We certainly know the you know, as I often tell students,
door is a new generation multi-pane door that enables homeowners to maximize.
As I often tell students, you know, certainly my ancestors, and as we have just discussed, some of my ancestors come from St. Thomas. Others of them come from the U.S. South. You know, my ancestors and all of the ancestors of my Black students really built Europe, and so we can't be under any illusions about the sheer amounts of money that are actually owed. So I'll leave that there.
Can I just very swiftly answer to Vivian? I mean, you referred to the Brattle report, which came out in autumn last year, and of course we were well ahead with our own discussions in the oversight group when that appeared. But Brattle puts 130 trillion, I think, at the total owed by European nations. But this is, as Christienna said, the response of one large part of the Church of England's funding arrangements. It's not even the response, as we see it, for the whole of the Church of England, and it's certainly not anything to do with, or should in any way get away with, get in the space of requests for national reparations, which is, as I understand it, essentially what Brattle wants to do, and we, you know, we would very much, all of us on the group, support those and many other reparations movements and activism that is going on. Thank you, Vivian. You're now doing an advertisement for me from my book. It's very kind.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Alex, as well. Glenroy, you're next in line.
Thank you, and thank you, Christine and Alex. By the way, Liz, if people are on their phone, what will happen is if they receive a call while they're online, the microphone will open. So that's why I think a number of people are.
Oh, is that what's happening?
Yeah, I don't think it's deliberate or anything. So
I just have
anyway,
to find it on the screen and switch off. Yes.
yeah. Christine, I thought at one point Vivian was going to ask you for your street number and door number, you know,
That's outside. That's outside of this meeting.
There's an excellent question by Delani in the chat, and I hope that he will put his hand up on mute. I won't get into it, just that one of the things that we've felt where individuals are descendants of enslavers would want to do is whatever craft they're in, whatever areas of concern they're in, the idea of a repair, of reparation, should take some notice of that industry. For example, the actor who played Doctor Who, whose ancestors owned quite a lot of land and enslaved a lot of people in Barbados. We said that one of the things he could do was actually create a situation where young African actors can actually get in the craft. The church must actually address some of that and some of the things that it did from a religious point of view. And that's my reference to Delani's question, because I think it's important. And again, I'm leaving it to him to expand on it. But if not, I'll put something in the chat, because it's an important point of if the church is seeking to be part of repair. Now, I put my hand up because some time ago, before the Oversight Committee was set up, Judy Richards and myself and a number of other people from the TUC Southeast Reparation Committee met with representatives of the church. We're not interested in throwing out elderly church people who are getting their pension and so on from the church accumulation of wealth on our blood and our ancestors' blood. But the reality is, whether it was the first sum or the second sum, we made it clear that it should not be based on some sort of whim or some sort of headline figures. Christienna and Alex, you should ask to see the books. You should ask to see the earnings that these enslavers have gained. It run into a substantial sum, which means that this is not proportionate. And what is the proportion? What is the expectation? But let's always keep in mind that reparation is about repairing the relationship that was destroyed by the behavior of European imperialists. So you know, it's nice that they've set up the Oversight Committee, but so many institutions are not willing to admit exactly how much they've earned out of this evil crime. And so I hope the Oversight Committee has some elasticity around its requirement and its right to demand information, that we won't see a situation where some people are saying, well, you can't see this, you can't find about that. So my question is, are you able to look into the history of the church's involvement in enslavement of African people? Thank you.
I will at least start, and then Alex, if you want to come in. I mean, I should declare right at the beginning, I don't think that number is proportionate. So like, certainly do not leave this conversation thinking that I think that this is a proportionate figure, or even necessarily derived in relationship to, you know, there are various kinds of means of determining, you know, value from the past and value in the present. So let me be clear that this figure and the 100 million that the church commissioners originally came to my mind, is not necessarily in a close relationship to the specific amounts from the Queen Anne's bounty. What I would say about research, this is actually something that's very important. That's very important for me. Again, basically as I stepped into the group, was talking about this, and here I would point to, for those of you who are either looking at the report or will look at it later, we do have a series of research recommendations. And the thing that was particularly important for me is that we get as much of a full accounting, both a financial accounting, but also I think one of the things that happens in Britain in particular is that a lot of times the toll of African chattel enslavement is calculated solely in terms of financial value, as opposed to the wider scale destruction and devastation that I think we really need to be accounting for. And so I certainly asked for, and the recommendations reflect a program of pretty significant historical research, both into investments into Queen Anne's Bounty and any successor funds over the entire period of enslavement. But also, for me, it's very important that we are getting a full accounting of the Church of England's involvement in, quote unquote, missionary work that was, at first designed to provide spiritual counsel to enslavers and basically, have them feeling as though they were fulfilling God's work, as well as the missionary work that they were doing among enslaved people and then freed people. But what I've also asked for, and this is reflected in the recommendations, is that we are not simply conceiving of the church's involvement as something that was happening either in Britain or the Caribbean only, but that we think about this in a much wider lens. So, for example, we know that Britain was very much connected to the United States South, and that's where it was getting its cotton from. So I would like to know where and the extent to which the Church of England was involved in that kind of investment. Same for Cuba and the same for Brazil. So we are asking for quite a significant amount of research, and critically, we have also recommended that research not be taken out of, or that the payment of that for that research not be taken out of the 100 million, but be funded separately, since this is something that the church needs to be doing and should not be using these funds in order to do, but should be paying for separately. Alex, I don't know if you wanted to come in on
yeah,
that.
I entirely support what Christienna says, and the 100 million has no logic to it at all, and that's clear, I think, within the church itself, and is indeed a derisory amount in this. I'm speaking for myself, of course, in the sense of what the amount of money the church has under investment, and also obviously in terms of the scale of the harm and the moral crime, as we put it. I don't think any of us would have joined in this if we were asked to support the 100 million. As a principle, I mean, and none of us would have taken part in this work, as Christienna says. I've just posted recommendation 30 in the report, which addresses that research thing, into the chat.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Sister Judah, would you like to come in next? Sister Judah, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, all right, okay. Sister Judah, you're all right, you there?
Unable to access camera. Oh.
You're here. We can hear you now, Sister Judah.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, fine. It's just I was getting all sorts of questions on the phone screen telling me about unable to.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. Really, what I wanted to say was, first of all, actually, thank you to Brother Toyin Ajibetu. I'm reasonably certain that a number of us on the platform know who Brother is. In fact, Professor now, Brother Toyin, someone who I've known has been a reparations activist like myself, a prominent committed reparations activist. So he's not here today because he's at work. So I just thought I would include his name in spirit in the conversation. I also obviously want to reiterate what those that have spoken so far have said, that the reparation sum could never begin at 100 million. And I want to reference those of us who know that we cannot put a sum on the lives of those that were kidnapped and all of the other atrocities that those that didn't get thrown into the ocean or throw themselves into the ocean, those that endured that 400-year genocide, no amount of money would ever begin to be able to compensate, not just for what they endured, but also for us that are now carrying the weight and responsibility of having to ensure that their cries over the centuries for justice are given. But what we can begin to do is, as we have in the, of course, I can only speak for the reparations activist community here in London, UK, and those in other parts of the UK, many that I don't know, but who have, like myself, in their own individual and collective capacity with other Black members of the community, exerted continuous stress and pressure on the British government, which I think is why we're in the position we are today, which goes back to the point again, I don't want to labor it. Over a decade ago, in 2013, when reparations was regarded as taboo, it was activists that were prepared to stand up and follow on in the footsteps of our African-American sisters and brothers, our Jamaican freedom fighters, and keep up this sacred and noble demand for, as Glenroy rightly identified, this crime against humanity. So, as we've all got so much to say, and it wasn't mentioned how much time we have on the platform today, I will try and keep it concise. I am a writer, so forgive me if it sounds like I'm extending beyond the limits of time we have. So again, I will try and keep it short and to the point. Many of us as reparations activists, and obviously speaking for myself, have particular areas of interest. We have people that have got, for example, health specialities who will be able to recognize the issue around post-traumatic slavery syndrome. We have those that have particular areas of interest around art, the way that was used during the African Holocaust to actually sustain our sanity and allow us to demand our freedom. We have those like myself that were educationalists that did their utmost as griots and as scribes to actually sustain some of our original culture in the midst of that horrific Holocaust. And so that brings me to the point where I am particularly interested in, and that is the re-education of our community. And I think it's critically important that whilst it's welcome that there are non-Africans who have a genuine concern to right the wrongs of the European ancestry that was involved in the African Holocaust, I think it's particularly important in this day and age that we don't have a liberal showcase of white well-doers that sideline the Black impression and the Black presence that has, as I said, prior to this conversation today, been relentlessly demanding here in London reparations for our ancestors. And I want to therefore say that I think it's important that there is Black education groups. Of course, there's all the other areas as well, the health, the arts, and so on and so forth, that allow activists that don't necessarily have a PhD, but have the commitment and have the track record of being actively involved in serving their community and sustaining the demand for reparations. So I'm asking really that, I think Christienna was speaking about the role of herself within your group. I would ask that there is a way that like myself, I'm working with a few other sisters as part of RTAG, which is Reparations to This Generation, who have written up a statement that was presented to the Reparations Conference in October, London last year, who have got ideas that we would like to develop independently from the liberal interpretation of how they see we should manage our reparations. I hope that's clear. If Christienna perhaps has also got an email, I'd be more than happy to elaborate further offline, because I'm conscious of the time that we have available and the fact there are other people on the platform that would like to speak. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, June, very much.
I think I'll just speak to that very quickly. What we have proposed actually is that quite significant engagement happen, but that also the the program, whether that be the grant program or the investment program, is really shaped by community. So not by me, but by community. So would love to have this conversation offline, but we are certainly, at least from the perspective of the oversight group, we are certainly very much aligned with the emphasis that you just placed on community groups, people who are already doing that work, who do not come from academia. I could not agree with you more as somebody who's just left academia. So we are fully aligned. Would love to speak with you more about this after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so Samsung SMA057G asked the question about the copy of the report, and the report, if I can just find it, I've put it on the PowerPoint as well, so that we've got that available. It's in the questions as well. So the link to the 41 recommendations made by the Independent Oversight Group to the Church Commissioners to the Church of England for setting up the Fund for Healing and Repair and Justice. This is the link to it. So
Liz, if I could, that's the link to the actual 41 recommendations, but the full report is also downloadable from the same site.
Right. Okay.
That's a different link, which I'll put in the chat again.
Right. Okay. So this is the recommendations link, and this is about the oversight group and about the.
You see that's an extract from the report, which is the actual recommendations. But okay. I'd urge anyone to read the full report, which sets out the background and how we worked and other important issues.
Okay, well, it's very readable, I have to say, so it's well worth looking at. So the Samsung SM wanted to know that, and we've answered that. So I'm going across. Dalian, would you like to go next? Dalian's disappeared, right? Okay. Judy, would you like to go next? Judy Richards.
Sorry, Dalian's point is actually in the chat as well. Even though it's just disappeared somehow.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because he's put quite a lot in his questions, hasn't he? Judy, can you unmute yourself, Judy?
I think June Lewis is actually before me, and I'd like to hear her first.
Oh, that's fine. I do apologise. It's difficult to know on the screen. June Lewis, then. June, do you want to come back in? I think June's already spoken.
Go to Judy now, and then Princess.
Right, June Lewis says, hi, can you hear me? The answer is no, June, we can't at the moment. So I'm going to ask now if it's okay. The only hand that I can see up on the screen at the moment is Priestess Imani, joining us from Jamaica.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, one-on-ones. I'm here just listening. I wasn't really sure what was the agenda, but the agenda is repatriation and reparation, I do believe. Yeah. I'm speaking as a Rasta from the Rastafari community, and I'm speaking on my own accord right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Princess Imani.
And but I was taken to England. Now, I keep hearing about reparation and repatriation from I was a young child. You know, to me, these are just avenues, continuous abuse of my people. You know, I think that the church offering some is also an insult. You know, we have another stage of modern day slavery, which is rampant. So all these things is really disturbing me, that really and truly that we are trying to offer some kind of when repatriation is feeding the people also, is also giving respect and love for the nation. Right now, Ethiopia, our mother of civilization, is struggling, is suffering because of war crimes, internal and external, hatred for the Black people. And I must say that. And because of that, no reparation can pay us. We have Windrush. We're not getting any funds from Windrush. They've set up committees so that they can get pay as staff. This is hard for us to understand, as a people, that we are getting support. Most of our children, over 78% of our young people, are incarceration. What is reparation? What is repatriation right now? I understand that we can talk about it, and I'm a bit disturbed. I'm sorry, but I do suffer from some mental disability. Yeah.
Princess Imani, thank you so much for your contribution. This is a very special session. This is only one step along a road that's who knows where it'll go, and I have every respect for you and your perspective.
Who needs to know where it's gonna go? You understand me? Right now, we need to be planning some kind of preparation to support, physical for our community as a Black people who went through such strenuous things. I'm still suffering. You understand me? I'm counting 558 years after Black people was taken out of Africa and put in the Caribbean island and the Americans. We are still here suffering. You have, even I'm saying as you were calling yourself my brothers and sisters, I'm saying my white people, right? I don't think you understand how painful this is for I and I as a people, right? Really and truly, that we need to have a settlement. We need to rest and take this to a closure, because we cannot continue educating our children with giving them some kind of false hope.
Very much indeed. I'm going to ask my colleague Eric Prayog to respond to you, please.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, these subject, reparation as a subject matter is a very traumatic conversation to be had. However, we need to start the conversation somewhere. Yesterday, I was in the University of Wolverhampton on a special event, the title of which was, let me just relate that title. The title was Acknowledge and Repair Why the UK Should Pay Reparation for Slavery. And that was a presentation, a seminar with Dr. Dennis Hamilton, and invited guest was Laura Trevelyan. Now, that conversation relate to some of the points that our sister has just made. We had a direct link from Grenada with Arlie Gill, and representing CARICOM, the 10-point plan. And in his conversation, what he related to us in relation to reparation wasn't just about money or a check. He gave us example of when the colonial powers left those islands and what was left behind. Infrastructure, issues around education, health, roads, all these things was mentioned. And also what was mentioned, 70%, there are more people in prison than in education. Now, these are facts. So reparation need to address a number of issues. But of course, the conversation must start somewhere. And I'm hoping that this is the start of a conversation. It's important that, we actually listen to those who have suffered, as a result of colonial. And we have to give individuals space in order to extract, you know, that information and allow that information to be fed into, yeah, whatever forum that exists. And of course, we're not the only people talking about reparation. It's a global conversation at the moment. And I brought the point to the seminar yesterday. I asked a question directly to the Vice Chancellor as to what Wolverhampton University is doing. And I gave the example of Glasgow University, which is in Scotland. So there is no English university that is really doing anything. But that was the start of a conversation with them yesterday. They need to step up and start doing something. So what our sister have said clearly, you know, is something that I think a lot of us are feeling. It's how we actually able to make that contribution into the bigger debate.
Thank you very much, Garrick. Okay, so Judy, you're next.
Yeah, I really hate talking about money when we're talking about reparations. It's about repairing the damage. People talk about the CARICOM 10-point plan, but don't talk about the CPAN, Caribbean, Pan-African Movement, 12-point plan, which starts with repair the damage. Look at what's happened to our people and sort that out, because otherwise money will just end up in the wrong hands. It won't do anybody any good. I've seen information about looking at businesses as recipients of the fund. Businesses are usually about individuals. The university is a good example, but it's university to university. We have people that are so damaged, they're never going to get to university. They're never going to be able to manage a business. We need to be looking at communities. I'm not going to stop long, I'm afraid, but I'm in a community centre in Brighton. I've actually left a 50+ group, BME 50+ group, to come to this meeting, and I'm going to have to leave because somebody's waiting for me. But it makes me think that what we need to be doing is not funding businesses, but funding resources centres. You've got the North London Caribbean Centre that is closed or closing. That shouldn't happen. These community centres are the hub where everything else can happen. In this premise that I'm in just Brighton, we've got a migrant children's group, we've got an exercise classes, a food bank, office space, meeting space, faith spaces. If we have enough support, we will get a supplementary school. That's the kind of repair that needs to be done. Priestess has talked about the Rastafarian community. I have yet to see any real attempt to engage the Rastafarians who've been dying for decades and generations, arguing for our right to reparations when everybody else thought it was a joke and something that they shouldn't be talking about. What I'm seeing still is people confusing racism and reparations. Addressing racism is something that everybody should be doing. Reparations is not the same thing. It is about repairing the specific damage from hundreds of years of enslavement and the legacy that says African people are stupid, sexually promiscuous, bad parents, untrustworthy, bad workers. All the things that they had to pretend we were to justify enslavement have to be dealt with. That is not just about dealing with racism, it's reparations work. And I think we need to look at somebody may be writing a paper explaining the difference between the two, because I'm getting fed up as a 40-year race equality worker, hearing people talk about reparations when they're actually talking about anti-racism. What I'm seeing is people being asked to design a saddle who've never seen a horse. People have got to stop talking to anybody in the street and start talking to the reparations activists who've been telling people for decades, this is what reparations is, this is what you need to be doing. Yes, look at other people coming in and wanting to put projects together, but if you're not talking to the reparations experts, then you're not going to be delivering reparations and you're going to have to start all over again. Because if we, as the descendants of enslaved people, do not believe that we have received reparations, then we haven't received reparations. So whatever the church does is not going to get anywhere. Sorry for ranting, but I'll stop for a couple of minutes more, but hello to all those at the moment. Bye-bye.
Take breath then, Judy, and thank you so much. And please give our regards to all the 50 people who are waiting for you to catch up with them. And then in the chat, there was a comment saying what you're saying is a good comment. Christienna, I don't know if you or Alex want to come back on that, but perhaps she's nipped off to see the 50. Maybe we'll take Deliana Adafo now, who's put several comments in the chat, but you're very welcome to raise those points now, Dalian.
Okay, hello, Liz and everyone. Thanks for putting me on. I think mine, I'll make it quick. Thank you to Brother Glenroy for highlighting that, I should say, verbally. My question is very simple, and I don't think it might even need a million from any fund, because it's about showing goodwill. You know, it's about how the church worked with Empire to ban all forms of African spiritual practices, which will cover things today which we find in even European paganism or nature-centered worship. In this day and age, this will be regarded as hate speech, you know, that you can ban someone's religious practices. And this is from the Church of England, in bed with Empire. So my question is about, first of all, the Jamaican activists I know actively working, trying to remove this piece of legislature from the laws. What will the Church of England actively do? Because, you know, I can't personally see where they'll need any finance from, apart from maybe legal aid. But this is a law that they are the original co-creators of it. What is the church going to actively do to help the Jamaican activists on the ground who are essentially fighting against this hate speech legislature? The second thing, I'm an educator up to further education. And I remember, I believe it was when David Cameron was in power. Or in the seat, and he, you know, we were encouraged. I remember we had CPD sessions of pushing what they call the 5 UK values, one of which is religious tolerance. And I guess if you look at it, you know, this day we celebrate Eid every year, you know, straight. Diwali has now also become very big. Chinese New Year, there's all these affordances for other religious cultural festivals, but there is not a single one of an African-derived source. And we also know the church was complicit in creating the law that will ban any celebration of such a religious festival today. That doesn't sit well if you're saying your values include religious tolerance, but you're in a country that is actively excluding, without making it explicit, the faith expressions of the people. And if we remember what everyone has also said, reparations is not about giving money. It's not an economic outcome. It's about the well-being and how people feel they've been either respected or are valued as contributors to the world. As we've just mentioned, there's patents that people have made billions from, but the originators have possibly died miserable, in total suffering from the same people they gave the means to make those billions to. Yeah, so this isn't, as I said, we don't need anything from the fund. It's a simple matter of, there's an Oshun festival. It is protected by the UN. The UK, Britain, today is a signatory to that charter, but yet still we don't have any recognition of just that one religious festival. So what I'm asking the church for, separate to the fund, what is it? What's it going to do to transform this upside state of affairs that is created? Because as of now, whenever you mention the word obia or juju to a majority of Black people, what you get is a superstitious reaction that we can trace very clearly back to the Obia law of 1898. Yeah, because there was a certain misconstruing and misrepresentation of African faith that continues to today. So that's my question, and sorry so long.
Dalian, thank you very much.
No problem.
Christianna.
Thank you too.
Christianna, do you want to respond to that?
I guess I'll say briefly, although I want to be clear, I do not speak for the Church of England like ever. So just to be very clear about that. We have asked, and this was a key area for, in particular, the theologians in the group, that I think we know, and certainly all of us on the call know, like it's a point of significant discussion within the oversight group, that part of what the Church of England did, and Dalian's entirely right, this is not a matter of money, but it is a matter of the sort of complete destruction of African ways of knowing, of being, of spiritual practices, is that the Church of England's role in empire during African chattel enslavement was to destroy and to aggressively destroy all of the spiritual practices of enslaved Africans, of Africans across the continent, and we know that this is the case, and we also know that there's a very long tail. So that and the law that Dalian points out is one of the clearest examples of that, which is still on the books. So what I can say as somebody who is not a representative of the Church of England is that I share that call. We've certainly made a similar point in the report. I think certainly we want to hear more of that feedback, more of that information, because it is really essential. We did hear similar points, particularly about the Rastafarian community during some of the engagement sessions. So we certainly want to hear more from y'all about this, because we know it is really important, and that will help us, I think, make that call even stronger to the Church of England. And just to very briefly pick up on Judy Richards' point, and I know what I'm about to say will not suffice, so I'm not saying it in a way that is to suggest that we have all of the solutions to your points, which I think are incredibly important, well made. I've taken notes, so that information will make its way back. But I think the one thing that I will say is that we do have a strand of the money, but also a strand. There's a program that we are hoping to build that is about community investment very specifically. So we basically believe, as you do, that is really critically important. We certainly want, certainly I would love to hear more from y'all who have concerns around this, so that we can again get that information to the people who are making decisions from this point forward. But we are very invested and very committed to the idea that part of what this fund should be doing is investing in communities, in community groups, and so on. So I'll leave that there.
Thank you very much.
Could I briefly?
Michelle? Oh, sorry, Alex.
Yeah, no, very briefly, just to add to what Christina said, and on Judy's point as well. So I've just posted the recommendation 18, and we should again say that these have been accepted by the Church of Commissioners Board, which lists where we think grant funding, when the fund is up and running, should be looking at, subject to more consultation. On the point about investing in business, the idea of the fund, and I'm not sure we've made, this has been made sufficiently clear, and in which case we need to work on that, is that it should be an in perpetuity fund. It should last forever. So it has to invest in order to remain at 100 million and then spend the income from that and more money that comes in. So the recommendation was investing in businesses, in Black-led businesses primarily, in order to keep building up the money of the fund so it can go on spending. So that's why business was singled out, and investing in Black-led businesses was obviously seen as part of the economic empowerment idea. But there's a long list there in number 18, which I've just put in the chat, of the areas, the thematic areas.
I'll just put that on the PowerPoint so people could read that while you were talking. Thank you so much, Alex. That's wonderful. Okay, so now I've got a list. I've got Michelle next, and then we've got Huey, then we've got Samsung, SM, AO, not quite sure. And then we've got Kay's put a request in, June Lewis wants to speak again. GAC UK is also requesting, and Judy. So I think we've got a lot of points. So briefly, just make your
I'll be really quick. Thank you, Liz. I'll be really
Thank you, Michelle.
because it sort of reinforces what Brother Dalian, the previous speaker, just said, but I had put something in the chat also. I want to thank everyone who's done work on this so far, and well done for raising the bar to another figure, and agreed with the speakers before who were talking about, and you could sense and you could see how deep people's feelings are when we're speaking about something that seems arbitrary or seems kind of functional, when really what's going on is that we are still feeling the reverberations of trauma. And so importantly, Dalian just mentioned about the spirituality aspect. This for me is a really key thing, because it speaks to our sense of identity, our sense of well-being, our sense of feeling that we know our root. And so one of the things that kept bugging me when I kept seeing this apology and so on is the fact that the church may have apologized and may be showing this goodwill of this extending this funds, but it's not really saying that the fact that it contributed to the denigration of African spiritual, traditional, indigenous life and practices is wrong or was wrong. That specific mention of African spiritual systems and way of life needs to be emphasized. And I have yet to read anything where that is clear, whether it's Obia, as they call it, whether it's voodoo, because we're still seeing African traditional practitioners being vilified all up and down the world. And this is a direct consequence of the intolerance that Dalian mentioned by the church. So where is that? Where is that detail in these apologies, where it's saying the fact that we did this was wrong, not just a broad sweep of slavery, because the church was like was emphasizing its superiority in spiritual and religious matters. So therefore, when its apology comes, it needs to emphasize that it was wrong in emphasizing that. Otherwise, we still get a situation where my community, my family members who are not practicing African spirituality think that the fact that I am, there's something wrong. I'm uncivilized. I'm odd. And I am spending my time having to re-educate or defend myself. Those things are directly in response to the church's role in where we are now. And that specific detail needs to be emphasized. That needs to be broadsheet emphasized, because it sends a strong message about when we're talking about how the repair would look for real. But also, I wanted to ask, because I had a meeting yesterday with the Bishop of London, and I wanted to find out whether there are plans to look at, whether there are plans, because someone just mentioned Glasgow University. First of all, I understand why some of the funds are going into research and so on, but we need to be careful that the academic lens and the constant museums and so on to the trauma is just not perpetual. We need those spaces of healing for sure. And we need to be working with the communities, because those academics, they stay with academics and they talk to each other like this. Anyway, the final thing is whether the Church of Scotland has been approached, or if the Church of Scotland is also part of this process of seeking reparations, because it's not just the Church of England. I don't know if that's been raised or shown anywhere, but I'd like to know that as well as a commitment to the church of highlighting the fact that its role in denigrating African spirituality needs to be addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, thank you very much. Should we in one of our recommendations, we've specifically mentioned the church's destruction of and of African traditional practices and spirituality as something that is yet to be addressed. We're not the Church of England. We're an independent group asked to advise them on what the shape of this fund should be. I'll post that recommendation into the chat now so you can see it. But and I think everyone who was on this group would agree with you. And the church has a lot to do, and that's a very specific and important part of what it has to do. On the Church of Scotland, no. I mean, the church. It's a different church, and I live in Scotland. I haven't heard yet that they have done anything to address their shameful part in this crime and this sin, as the Church of England has declared it.
Thank you.
If I can add as well, Alex, also the church in Wales, but the church in Wales wasn't created until 1912. So the time that we're talking about was the Church of England. So there are wider issues, aren't there? Huey, would you like to come in?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you for the organisers, and also thank Brother Toyin that sent me the invitation, or I would not have heard about this. I'm thankful to Brother Toyin for that invite. One of the things that I think that we need to be careful of is actually trying to drive this point where money is not part of the situation where we should be addressing. And I believe that is the wrong attitude. We all know that reparations to do with repair, but money is also going to be part of that repair. And without money, you can't even go into Tesco's, you can't even go into Sainsbury's, you can't go anywhere. So we know that money is going to be very essential in the repair of that damage. We in one of our organizations called Manhood Academy Global, one of the things that we do when we're mentoring our young masters is to teach them the science of money, teach them the science of business. So yes, we do have to allocate many of that reparations money into businesses because we have a high unemployment rate amongst our African males. That's why there's 25,000 Ghanaians at the border of Libya trying to get into Italy as a direct result of unemployment, a direct result of the reparations call. And so if money was allocated in these areas, it would alleviate people trying to go the back way throughout Africa to try to get into Europe. And, you know, I always look to the Jewish community in regards to how did they address their reparations when their reparations money came to them. You didn't hear none of them talking about they're trying to repair the damage that Hitler done to them. You knew that they were being allocated money into their communities to build up businesses, to employ other Jewish people, to employ other Jewish family members. And that's how they rose up. They became politically and economically strong all over the world because part of that reparation was put forward into business and money. So we should always look at that as an example of what did they do or how did they overcome when they was given their reparations money. So business is definitely something on the table for me that I am interested in, and money is going to be part of repairing that damage as far as I am concerned. Thank you for giving me that few moments of your time. Black Power. I can't hear you. I think you've gone on mute.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I'd actually muted myself. Thank you very much, everybody. I've just checked with our two guests today, and they're okay for another 15 minutes. So we'll keep going with the questions. So I'm really pleased. So we've got Samsung SMAO 57G. Would you like to go next?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Would you like to
thank you.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's June Lewis. Sorry for the interconnection. I think it's like somebody said, if you have a phone call, it sort of interferes with it. I wanted to put something on record because it was a question that was asked right at the beginning, and it was about the Catholic Church. I attended a meeting last year at the Vatican in Rome with a group of Americans, reparations groups, grassroots movements and academias, and the Pope's representative. They've accepted the presentation to look into reparations on behalf of the Catholic Church. So if I can find that, I will send you that link. One of the things they did say is they would open up their archives and go back as far as possible. So the documents will be opened to this group. And that was the main thing that people were asking for. And I was definitely asking for. The documentation is there. Somewhere along the line, some people would like to see the documents in the archives. But just to let you know that the Catholic Church, which represents the whole global church movement, have accepted it. And it's just now they need to allocate it to a department and a bishop to take up. But they were going back, they wanted to go right back to the Dia Dumdus, which was assigned right at the beginning in Columbus's days. They wanted to go that far back and make a presentation and put everything open. So that's their starting point. The other starting point for some people in the USA is their government under Biden. He's giving a lot of grassroots groups small grants if they're in the reparations movement. So people who are following it, if you look at California, there's lots of grassroots movements there for different things, for housing, for Tulsa, to recognize the land, to just right the wrongs, even going down to the history books, where certain things have been missed from the history books. There was one book where it said, and the slaves came and they got an education, and that was it. And they were like, no, 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 no. So, you know, there's things like that that are being practical, so you can see it. So just to let you know that it's there. It's good that the church is putting things out there. It'd be nice if the government actually said it, but that's a whole different ballgame. There are talks in the Caribbean for reparations as well. Various grassroots movements. CARICOM is leading, and other entities are leading as well. Canada is leading. Canada is getting behind about 100 delegates to go to various United Nations and other international bodies on reparations. So there is a movement going on. I just think sometimes, like, I've fed it to people, if other people could feed it back, then we would know that we were all talking about one thing, which is repairing the mind, the body, the soul. Also, for some people under the UNESCO scheme, they want their history back. The history back means open up some of the archives that we have here in the UK. Some is like repatriation for the bones that are kept in the British Museum. Why are they in a box in a cupboard downstairs? Either put them on display or send them back. So one movement is to send back some Aboriginal bones to Australia, and other things like that. So it's not always about the money, but if we can keep the momentum up about the history and the activism, that's a real good starting place as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And I'm glad you managed to get back in again, June. Now, we had a request on the chat from Judy Richards, who'd like to speak. Judy?
Sorry, no, I'm not looking to speak again.
Oh, right. Okay, then. Thank you. Just checking. Right. Twilight Bay, you've not spoken before. Would you like to come in? And at any time, Christina and Alex, please respond if you need. Twilight Bay, are you there? Sometimes it gets a bit like a seance this while you're waiting for people. Oh, while we're waiting. Oh,
Yes,
Twilight.
yes. Apologies. I was just having a bit of difficulty with turning off
No
the mute.
problem.
I'd like to first of all thank you for allowing me to participate in this meeting. I'd like to acknowledge Toyin for making it possible for me to be here, and greetings to everyone else on the line who I know. I've had a cursory glance of all the recommendations, so forgive me if I say something that may be listed there. But in listening to everyone's contributions and everything that's been said, I think also that the Church of England, and if possible, their ability to influence other churches, should get behind or at least acknowledge some changes in the governmental in governmental policy. I think that reparations has a lot to cover, as everybody has said. It's not just economics. It's not just issues around repatriation of stolen artifacts and things of that nature. I also think that there's things to be addressed in terms of taxation. As it is with the Native Americans, they don't pay to go to university in the United States. They don't pay federal and personal income tax. And that is a way in which you can contribute to an individual directly. I also think that, that lobbying for that type of change in in policy across Europe as a collective, not just individual states. I really don't like the piecemeal approach to how reparations is being dealt with, because when the global slave trade took place, there was an understanding, there was a coming together, there was a whole discussion about how they would cut up this great African cake between the European nations, and there was a unity there. I think there should also be a unity in how reparations is addressed, and I think there should also be some lobbying in the government as well for the return of political and what I will refer to is not repatriation, but rematriation of those Africans that was displaced all over the world. Me being born in the United States, recognize that as a United States citizen, I do not have representation in the United Nations that represents me as an African heritage person. I only have representation that represents me as a United States citizen, whereas every other member of the United States has representation for their nation of origin as well as their citizenship in the US. So if you're Irish American, not only do you have the US ambassador, you also have the Irish ambassador. And I think those types of things are reconnecting people back politically and economically to their places of origin, which we have the technology to do that nowadays. I think governments should put in place laws that would allow these things to happen, facilitate them and support them as a part of the reparations package. And I also think that, to allow people to continue with the narrative today of saying, why do I have to pay reparations? It had nothing to do with me. That needs to truly be addressed. And what I mean by that is that as long as the modern world continues to thrive off of all of the money that was generated to set up the modern world that exists today based on industrialization, and industrialization based on the colonialization, and that then based upon the chattel enslavement of African heritage people, that is the connection. And so today's world is very much so built upon that legacy. So therefore, no one, some people can say they were not individually responsible, but yet they're still reaping the benefits and the rewards of what was done. And just as that is a continual process today, I think that the reparations process to take at least 500 to 1,000 years to pay back and repair the damage that was done. And I think that should be enshrined in law. And I think the Church of England, as well as other religious institutions, should do the same to lobby governments throughout the world to put those things into place to make sure that it happens. Other than that, this continual process of what we've been going through will continue, and nothing will truly be repaired. The piecemeal thing will make sure that that doesn't happen. and the various different approaches where people are just thinking about their own individual progression or their own individual enrichment will lose out on the benefit of something that will heal the entire population of people of African heritage that have suffered this great tragedy, including the displacement of many of us throughout the world of places and lands and speaking languages that we should have never been subjected to. And so as long as that legacy of resources continue to thrive in the world, I think a program of such reparations or repairs should be put in place. And I think the church should use that power as moral authorities in their various jurisdictions to put the pressure on governments to make those kind of changes. That's my piece. I'm sorry if I took too long. Thank you.
It's no problem at all, Twilight, Brother Twilight. Thank you very much indeed. And there are complimentary comments that saying that you're spot on. Now I know, Christina, you're taking copious notes, I can tell, and Alex has got a brain, so he's remembering many of the, these points. It's just fascinating. I'm now going to ask Wangari Wakogi if you'd like to speak, then Everton, then we've got Sister Judah again, and I'm going to ask Garrick to be the last person who makes a comment. Thank you very much indeed. Wangari.
Thank you.
I'm not hearing you too well, Wangari.
I'm Wangari Wakogi from Kenya. I am a Mau pioneer freedom fighter at Renton.
Come a bit nearer, Wangari. Wangari, come a bit nearer to your mic so we can
There's a
hear
bit of
you.
echo coming through. Should get closer to the mic, please.
Yeah.
I repeat myself. I am Wangari Wakogi from Kenya. I am the coordinator of Mau Freedom Fighters, and also as a descendant of those who are Kenyan before even the Portuguese arrived in our country, Kenya, during the slave trade and another areas where they were also getting these elephant tusks and other items from our country.
Wangari, I'm really struggling to hear you. I don't know if others are also struggling. It's most unfortunate.
I'm saying I'm a descendant of the native of Kenya. At the same time, I'm using my phone because I have no internet, which I could have used the phone. In our country, you have this internet problem. And also, being one of those from where even the Church of England came to start in Africa, and especially Kenya, they started their church among our community, and we went through a lot in losing land and other property, and also even from the origin, from the background of the origin of the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, they are the generation of our people, because one of our young women who was a girl was sold to England, grew from Kenya, although the mother had been taken to Portuguese first and then gave back to Angulo. And so I can even see
Wangari, I'm so rude to be interrupting you again, but we're really struggling to hear you. Is it possible you could put a comment in the comments? Put your comment there in the chat. We really can't hear you. Maybe
I was using a microphone outside. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, thank
properly?
you. Oh, yes, wonderful.
Okay, thank you. I am saying now, my question is, which criteria, I would like to know that what kind of criteria you are going to use to address the reparation which you give justice to the affected, since not every race in our different countries were mainly affected like others, because mainly when these people were making slave trade, they were going direct mainly to the natives. And then when the church also came, they came addressing the areas where the natives originated, and to have the strength of their foundation. And especially in Kenya, they came into the central region of Kenya from around Mount Kenya, which was a very good place of doing agriculture, and where they even go the origin of the family of Queen Elizabeth the. They came from our tribe, Kenya, the Kikuyus, and that is why you feel the Mau Mau, they were very bitter on what they had been going through. So my question is, how are we going to get the right justice done? And because I would like to know the criteria you are going to use, so that we can feel that justice will be done to our people.
Thank you, Wangari. Now, Christienna, I know you're taking all this in, and Alex as well. So thank you very much indeed for that.
There's one thing I can say very, very briefly, which won't answer that specific question, but I think it's important to know that what we have recommended is actually that things like the criteria, how businesses and how community groups are selected, that is a process that happens with a lot of community engagement. So there's no idea that certainly the oversight group is devising criteria, or that whoever is employed by this entity are the people who are solely establishing criteria. All of that is going to be what we have proposed, is that all of that should be really co-created with communities, in part exactly for the reasons that Wangari has just shared. So that's to say we don't have a sort of set of criteria that we're working with at the moment, because we want that to be co-created with communities to the greatest extent possible. And on a related point, and I realized that I never answered this question from Michelle earlier, and I think it came back up in the chat, so I did want to address it about the research and basically who gets to do that research. I really could not agree with you more that the research should not be done for the most part by academics, and that money should not be flooding back into universities where it's just going to vanish off into whatever their priorities are, which are never going to align with ours. So that is also a recommendation in the report, that research should be done by community practitioners who are already working in those fields, because we know that there are community historians who have been doing this work for a very long time, and who do not need to be doing it with academics who often, even if they profess an interest in sort of more community-oriented work, often the incentives that they're working within go against that. So we hear that point, we acknowledge that point, and we certainly have proposed in line with that point, because for me in particular, it was a grave concern that this money not just go flooding into, in particular, British universities.
Thank you very much, Christienna. Everton Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to be really quick. We talk a lot about reparations, and I've come from the school of thought that reparation goes hand in hand with repatriation. With the church's far reach into the governments and countries on the continent of Africa, what is the church's take on repatriation?
Shall I go? I mean, Everton, thanks very much. I think we're all of us who've studied reparations history and activism and the calls of different communities are well aware that repatriation is very much a part of that. And I absolutely. I mean, Christienna and I don't speak for the church. We're independent advisors to the for the oversight group, with the oversight group for the commission. But I mean, clear in what we've recommended is that all groups and the desires and wishes of all groups for justice need to be researched and addressed as the fund gets its plan for spending together. And that the word does appear in our report, repatriation, and that certainly would be on the agenda. And we will be keeping a close eye as independent observers to make sure the fund and those who run it make those consultations.
Thank you, Alex, very much. And thank you, Christienna. Sister Judah, I think you've got a point, and I think we've got another message here in the chat.
I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, fine. Thank you, Sister Judah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. I know I've spoken already a few times, but you know, having been involved in this for decades, there's always so much that needs to be said without going into the past unnecessarily, apart from a fact of our ancestors' past. And on that note, I really just want to, whilst I don't agree with everything Huey said, I agree with the sentiment in respect of cost for reparations. As I said, you cannot put a cost on one life, much less the life of millions over the centuries. But what financial justice, reparatory financial justice does, it allows us to implement programs of healing. Black communities need safe Black healing spaces. We have, for example, here in Tottenham, the Bernie Grant Arts Centre. It's overpriced, and the very communities that it was set up for oftentimes feel alienated. Brother Dougie and I talked about this. Unfortunately, it never materialized. He's now joined the ancestors about what could we do to exert pressure to get use of that space. Many of us now have abandoned the Bernie Grant Arts Centre, I hasten to add, because we have been pushed out by a liberal agenda. We have the Marcus Garvey Library within the Tottenham Green Centre, but again, it's not always easily accessible. As I think Pepperkai, for example, and another sister whose name escapes me at the moment, have tried to access it for Black initiatives. I myself, when I gave a presentation on the 28th of October in 2023, reparations, what does that mean in theory and practice, had all sorts of I can only politely put it, bureaucratic wranglings. So really what I'm asking for consideration and something that can be done instantly is that Black communities who don't have Black centres, community centres, for all kinds of reasons in terms of the challenges from the Windrush settlers in trying to access loans from the British banks to set up business and so on and so forth. When you look at the fact that we don't have the kind of centres like the Bernie Grant Centre is, what can be done, therefore, is that the British government, with the COE and the Insight Group supporting the idea, those centres in every borough, whether it's in Brixton, whether it's in Peckham, where there are large concentrations of Black people, those community centres and libraries should be opened up so that we can have a space initially to have our conversations around reparations. And those of us that have specific areas of interest and those that will be coming in to learn, because the concern I have that has already been expressed, well, I think when I first talked about the issue of the liberal agenda, is now that we have the likes of various white individuals who are admitting their ancestors' bloody past, they are being seen as the, if you like, leaders of this conversation. When, as I've said already, there are many activists, Black activists, who haven't got their PhDs, who don't need a Eurocentric PhD to explain their suffering and their ancestors' suffering. I got my knowledge of this from Bernie Grant firsthand when I first met Bernie Grant many decades ago, talking about reparations. That's what sparked my involvement prior to my other social political concerns. So I really just want to land on this point and say that we have an opportunity now to get immediate access to buildings in London that will allow groups like, as I said, RTAG. We've identified 5 areas because obviously we're not government funded. We haven't got the, funds to, as I saw advertised, I'm sure many of us know, last year, a reparation consultant part-time was being advertised. Now, who's going to take that job? I can think of a number of people, myself included, that would be more than well able to have taken up that post. But when you're looking at what the criteria is, it's almost as if it's done to deliberately alienate us. So the request is open up the spaces now where reparations activists can get together, do the work that we've been doing for decades, and begin to look at how we can get those finances in order to make those programs a reality and not just a talk shop. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak again.
That's okay, Sister Judith. Thank you very much for those points. Now, Kay has put a couple of really pertinent points in the chat. Kay, you're welcome to speak if you want, but I'm not seeing your hand up.
Okay, let me see.
There
Can you
you
hear
are,
me?
Kay.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Speak up, though.
Okay, great. There are a couple of points I would like to make, following on from a few people. I'll just run through them quickly. Religion, spirituality was mentioned by Yar Santua, Sister Yar Santua. And I think it's really interesting because this whole process is being brought by the church. But yet, I think as Yui and Sister Yar Santua pointed out, Michelle, the whole thing about the destruction of African spirituality, if those who've traveled to the continent will know, you go to Ghana and you have the dungeons, and what people might not know is the dungeons were below and the churches were above, and people were praying with the Bible above the dungeons while the ancestors were downstairs being put in holes day and night, 3 months at a time, hundreds of them in there, eat, drinking, sleeping, defecating, having babies, everything, living as normal for months on end with just a hole, 12 by 12 inches, whatever hole, and that's all they had. But upstairs, people were preaching to their God. So the church really has to basically, or it should do, make amends for that process and bring, and not just because it destroyed our spirituality. And there's a shrine to it in a dungeon. When you go into the dungeons, you can see it there. There should really, renounce the whole biblical Christianity situation on the continent and say, listen, this is where, this is how it should be, because there's, and someone here could probably correct me, I think is it every 2 or 4 years, all the archbishops go into Ethiopia because of the Ark of the Covenant. I think that whole process should be brought to bear, and people understand, Africans understand where their spirituality comes from and who they should be worshipping. That's one aspect. Business. I think this money, a lot of this money should be going poignantly right now to all those people traveling from the African continent who are coming over here in their hundreds and their thousands every year on boats. All of a sudden they have to travel, like I think Brother Yui says, that the Libyan border, 25,000 of them, for example, they come into Europe because they want a better life, and they are dying in their thousands. What a reversal of fortune, where they're trying to get here, whereas they were brought here hundreds of years ago, and that is doing the same thing, but they're actually paying their own monies to get here. What this money should also be doing primarily, one of the big 5 points, invest money on the African continent so they don't have to come here, because the African
I don't agree with that. The government in Ghana is
let me to speak. I do business in Africa. I have an African focused investment company for the last 15 years. And I will say to you, I live on a continent, I travel on the continent, I invest in the continent, and people come to me to raise 100,000, 100 million, or a billion for projects. And I will say to you, if we put money into the continent and we build infrastructure, education, and invest in businesses and all the such alike, people won't have to come here. They don't actually want to come here, but they come because of Europe and America being what it is. So if we invest our monies or this money in the continent, they can sit there. They can sit there and they can invest in their families and just maybe come to Europe or America for a trip, but not to come to live in these cold countries. Why should they do that? So you say what you say, but that's my opinion of living there and doing business on the continent, because I deal with guys and girls on the ground in the continent who have access to businesses or want to build businesses, and it might only cost them 5, 10, 15, 20,000, but they haven't got that. They come to me for it. But this money would help them to create their businesses, as opposed to $1 a day and still suffering. So there are different ways to look at it, but that's another thing. That's one thing they should look into. Education is an enormous thing. The education system in the continent is a colonial system. It is colonial. It needs to be an African-focused education system. Throw that system away. People in Ghana a few years ago, there was a whole big thing about young men going through education system and the system being very colonial. We need to teach them a different system, a system which they can recognize, and they're not basically being taught by the oppressor system consistently, because we have independence in the country for the last 60 years or so, but you still have an education system which is colonial, and people don't know nothing. I go into Africa and I do business. I have my property or my cars fixed, and people have got one-track mind. All they can do is one thing, and they won't do anything else because they've not been taught to be critical thinkers. They've been brainwashed to think one way only, and that's why they're stuck in many cases. What else am I going to say?
Well, just while you're collecting your thoughts, Kay, can I just, I'll let you just finish off in a moment, but if you've joined us since the beginning of the session and you haven't put your emails into the chat, would you mind doing that now? I'd be very, very grateful. And then we really are going to have to wrap things up before in a moment. So we're starting up the wrapping up now. So after yourself, Kay, we've got Sister Dr. Sandra, and we've got Jeff Dan, and I might have a moment with Twilight again, and then Garrick. I promise you, you'll be the last one.
Okay, I did actually put my email address in your system earlier on.
That's fine, that's great.
Okay, so you can have that there. Glenroy has my details. I think Twilight has them, and I would like to speak.
That's fine.
So there, but another thing I was going to say, Yui touched on the prison system, because I mentor African Caribbean young men and women, have done for several years via the Amos bursary. And we have young men come to us, or we have men and women now come to us, age 15, and their heads are down and they're spotty-faced 15-year-old kids. But give them a couple of years and their heads up, and they're looking forward, and they can present to a room of 1,000 people. So it's all about the education system. And I think Huey touched on the education, but also the financial literacy. I teach people financial literacy because of my background in business and finance for the last 30 odd years, basically. And that's another thing, because we have these young men and women. Only today I read about the Chris Cabba case, where the police shot him at point blank range. They blocked his car in, he can't go anywhere, and then they shot him and kill him. Why would you want to do that? So he's now on charge as police, Mr. Blake, for shooting this young man. We don't need that kind of situation. That's a young man's life gone. A whole family's gone. If this police officer who shot him, his family now going to be on point for doing something that he should not have done. And it's about the whole education system. Financial literacy, education, investing some of this money in businesses and young men and women. We can tap into that very, very easily because, as Huey says, he's part of an organization that mentors young men and women. and we should put this money into these organizations, because the government doesn't care. The government has no interest whatsoever. So I think, as I'll just finally say to you, I'd like to have said more, but I think I've said enough to basically say it's all about BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. Whether it's Africa or Europe, we need to do that to enrich and empower these young men and women. Asheo, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kay. And Christienna, I know that you're writing furiously there, and there's so many really good points that have come up in this session. I've actually behind the scenes asked Christienna and Alex if they might come back after Easter perhaps, and we could have a follow-on session. Let's see. We'll won't hold you to that yet though. Right, so Sis Dr. Sandra, then Twilight, then Garrick, then we just wrap the whole thing up.
Peaceful greetings to everyone gathered here. I want to give thanks for the opportunity to contribute and to listen to some very powerful activists who are here. I'm not sure how many are here, courtesy of the notification from our brother, Dr. Toyin Agabetu, but he alerted me to this meeting, which I think is a very important one. And thank you to those of you who have reached out to me in private. I attend, but sometimes I don't speak for reasons I won't go into right here. I want to acknowledge Christienna, who I'm not familiar with, but I'm reassured by her presence here and her continued stating that she's not representing the church. The church, the state, political systems are guilty of the harm that has been caused. And I think our brother Kay and other people have spoken to that. Brother Twilight and Sister Judy and a number of, almost, as I look at the list of participants here, I am reassured. But what I do want to say is that I'm not sure if you can actually achieve this, but I'm going to offer it up anyway. There has been several, not attempts, because I've understood what people are saying when they say we have to look at spirituality and we have to look at African healing systems. And we even have to look at the paradigms that you're using to try to calculate sums of money that cannot possibly do what needs to be done. Money alone cannot do it. There are other knowledge systems, there are other healing systems, there are other knowledge bases, there are ways of doing things which are beyond a Eurocentric paradigm. And I fully support all calls to be wary of academics. I sit in a space where there are academics. I know exactly where the 10-point plan has come from. I'm very familiar with the ones who have come up with a 10-point plan, and I am reassured by the 12-point plan, but even that does not fully embrace that which has been shared by ones gathered here. We have heard, sorry, I heard somebody else's voice. Should I continue?
Yes, please continue. I can't see anybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I've heard from a Rastafari sisterin, and I've heard how people are speaking and how they are breathing. This is a clear indication that ones of us who are activists are still traumatized every time we come to a gathering where it appears there is not a full understanding of the trauma of those who have caused the trauma and their descendants, and also the nature of our concerns and our way of articulating it. So if there is any way, and I guess I'm speaking to you directly, Christienna, because you seem to be central to this discussion. The paradigms that come out of Europe, the models that come from academics, must be viewed with some suspicion. Academics write papers for their career trajectory. Activists, as has been said by Sister Judah, many of us have been doing this for years because we are motivated by something different. We do not look for favoritism, and neither are we driven by ego. We are driven by the voices of our ancestors. We need to be sitting at the table. And every time I see a gathering of academics or anyone who is looking for title, I become very nervous. So I'm just encouraging you in particular, Christienna, if you can ensure that you continue to reach out to us. We are grateful because, well, I am in particular grateful because of Brother Toyin. I would not have known about this gathering. I am someone who went to a Church of England school, and I'm still in recovery, and I'm in my 60s. What happens in there is not education, it is schooling. And it is that Eurocentric paradigm that continues to imprison us. We are using English, and our African trauma cannot be articulated in English. The healing has to come, the reparations has to come using different paradigms. Peace and blessings to all.
This is Dr. Sandra. Thank you so very much. Christienna?
Yeah, I'll respond to that. Thank you. And mainly, I just want to say, just to confirm that I have heard what you have asked me for specifically. And I will, first of all, thank you for those comments and those reflections. I will sit with them, and also will do what I can to be sure that that there is a broader range of people at the table. Part of why, and I'll just say this very briefly in terms of a personal reflection, part of why I have been very clear to say that I'm not a representative of the Church of England is because my own mother's life was destroyed by the Church of England. So I am not, there's no sense from me of the church as a benign place, but as one that does profound, significant harm. So I share that concern with you. And certainly, please feel free to reach out. I would love to speak with you further. And less me speaking, but more my hearing from you. And I will take all of that under very serious consideration. And I thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Twilight, just 2 minutes, no more. For Twilight.
I will be even more brief than that. I'm just acknowledging all the things that have been said about spirituality and faith. And I've also acknowledged that there has been calls for historical documentation and information to be put forward. And I just want to add to that call that everything biblical should be decolonized so that the African presence, and not only biblical in biblical times, but in Islamic times, right across all the religious and faith systems of Africa, which include the Abrahamic faiths, should be decolonized and give our people back the responsibility of their own self-determination to choose what is best for their household and to take their families forward. I just think that needed to be said because I'm a history buff, and I know that the history speaks far broader, and we should be asking for that to be done as well by the Church of England. Decolonize the religious systems, all of them.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, now I've got my two colleagues here, Roland Hooslin and Garrick Prayog, who are from Justice for Windrush Generations. Roland, if it's all right, I'm going to ask Garrick next. And Garrick, I think that yours will be the last bit before we properly wrap up, because we've run over well and truly, and we're taking a lot of time. But we've just had a message from PJ to say that there's a sense that people really need to be heard and need to have space to say what's on their mind. And he points out there was a link posted earlier where people can add their comments to be considered. So Garrick, over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Firstly, can I just say that the conversation this afternoon is very enriching. I would say probably even more than that. We're going to try and at least capture all the comments in the chat, so that, that can be saved if you haven't made note of those comments. I think there's a way to do that, Liz. So we're going to ask Simon to bring that out to us. So that information, would like to feed that back to Christienna and to Alex directly, because you may have missed something. So I think all those comments are important. The other thing to say, a lot of the comments, I know you're not representing the church as it is, just the oversight committee. And a lot of the comments will not be under your radar to deal with. So you have to pass it on, as it were. And in particular, we haven't really speak about church and state. And of course, state is King Charles and is head of the church. And as you know, that King Charles is currently researching whether or not you need to do it or not, but he's doing it to see the connection of his family in slavery. But he could come and talk to us and we could give him the information directly, but he's doing it, and that's fine. However, what needs to happen, there need to be more of these conversations, and we need probably to move the conversation to somebody from the church. And that's a strong point, because a lot of the question that came out this afternoon relate directly to the church. And the Catholic Church is one that need to have that conversation, because they started it and then the Church of England continue it. So both churches, we need to have that space. So it may be that we might try and facilitate something with the Catholic Church in order, for future conversation. But just to say that these conversations we have under the Black History Conversation, they're designed to actually encourage these conversations to cross borders. So they're not a conversation isolated, they're conversation to be had in different forums, because that is the only way we can actually stimulate further conversation and build and something. So I would hope that would happen naturally. There is no definitive eligibility criteria set as yet, as far as I understand, about how this money will be distributed. And I think those are some of the questions that came out of this afternoon conversation. And who's going to be involved in that, to make sure that we have a good balance, whether you call it a committee or panel, whatever it may be, in order to facilitate and distribute the funds. But clearly, other comments has come out of the conversation as to the repairing and what is meant by repairing. And I would suggest, if you try and follow Ali Gill from Grenada, he gave a very good overview of the issues that the Caribbean nations are facing in relation to reparation. in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of, you know, a wide range of issues. So, you know, I think it's good for us to be on the same page. It's also important that, you know, when we have these conversations, we try and focus on what we believe we can contribute to the conversation. And it is clear that so many good comments have come into the conversation this afternoon, and many of us wouldn't have had the opportunity to do this ordinarily. So it's again how we find the appropriate spaces in order to do that. And of course, one of the organizations present is Global African Congress. And, you know, we always leave the reparation agenda for that organization, because I deal with the Windrush aspect in modern times. But reparation is what Global African Congress been doing for over 20 years. So, you know, they've been having these conversations far longer than you know, I've been involved in Windrush. So there are organizations with specific remit, and we need to connect these conversations, you know, with different organizations that's at the forefront of reparation, both in the UK and outside the UK. So I hope, you know, the networking this afternoon has accomplished something by hearing those different voices and making those connections. So thank you very much for your contribution this afternoon. It's been very enlightening to listen and hear all the various comments. And, you know, we can never say this without, it's a very emotive subject, reparation. And people have expressed the damage that, you know, has happened to their individual families through, you know, the church. But we've also spoke about the intergenerational damage through Windrush. We've spoke about that. It's a continual damage of trauma. And, you know, that's a big part of the repairing. And, you know, we haven't got all the answers, but at least we started the conversation. So let's continue the conversation and see where we can take this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Garrick, and thank you for your ongoing support. The work that Garrick and Roland, June Elizabeth White-Smith Gully, and so many others are doing also to campaign for justice for the Windrush generations is just remarkable, and I just congratulate you for that, and thank you so much. I'm just looking, trying to work out how to make sure we save all these wonderful comments. So yes, and thank you very much for all your contributions there. We are starting to wrap up now. I know Jeff and Therese, you're going to be disappointed, but when I say we're going to wrap up, then more hands go up. So if that's okay, how do you feel, Christienna? Do you want to hear the last two comments?
I mean, I'm hard pressed to say no. I don't want to hear the last two comments. So
you're not, are you?
So let's please.
We'll be here all day, all night. Jeff, you've got 1 minute, and then Teresa, you've got 1 minute. Sorry, I sound a bit assertive there, but I'm just aware that.
So I've actually saved the chat, so we've got it.
Oh, jolly good. Jeff, can you unmute, please?
Right.
And
I'm unmuted.
do your minute.
Okay. Thanks very much for giving me an opportunity. I will be a minute. So my name's Jeff Pierce, right? I represent the Rastafari community here in London, right, and globally, yeah. And we have many reparation projects going on. Our company is TTIRRC. It's a registered community interest company here in London, here in the UK, right? So, and we would really love to get involved in the conversation. I've put our email address in the chat. Yeah. So please let me know. And everyone else who would like to get in touch, they can get in touch with me through there. I've even seen some people in the conversation who I've known for 50 odd years, right? God bless you, Natalie, right? You were the one that started it all for me, right? So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. And what I'd like to say is that we'd like to invite you to come and speak on time on Black History Conversations so that you can tell us about the work that you're doing. And we might invite our colleague from Jamaica, Yasus Afari. He's supported Black History Conversations in the past, so it would be really great to bring you together. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Teresa, 1 minute for
Yeah,
you.
hi, thank you. I'll be quick. So I'm a part of the group that just done the Jamaican Awakening Summit in Kingston. Hi, Brother Vivian.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So what we were there, we covered the cost ourselves, and we really found some real truth about if we come out, what can happen. It was magical. But my comment here, and I'd love to work with you, and we'd love to work with you because we've got a global plan to go every year to a different place. We're going to Sao Tome to reverse the triangle. We're doing the repair as well, and we'd love to align with what you're doing. I loved what was happening in this talk today. Everybody was just so genuine and really heartfelt. The repair is really needing to go fast and slow, in my opinion. We have children born today suffering in the same system. We have schools who are now taking in children to do the same damage to them. And that's my contribution, is that we've got to go fast and slow. We've got to go fast with the children who are getting ruined now, and we've got to go slow with doing the repair. And I'd love to be in that conversation to explain a bit more. Thank you.
Teresa, thank you very much indeed. And we'd love you to join Black History Conversations, because one of the things that we've been doing last year was we followed the Windrush journey from Jamaica each week, as it would have been. And that was fantastic. And we heard about the good works that you were doing there. So I hope you've all put your emails in the chat so that we can catch up with folks and you can keep in touch with us. Now, I've had a special plea from Garrick and Roland who want to say, do a PR. So who's it going to be, Garrick or
I'll do
Roland?
it, yeah. Thank you very much, Liz. So tomorrow, Saturday, the 9th of March, special public engagement event in London, in Balham, Southwest London, Southwest 12. The Academy, 40, let me give you the full address. Chestnut Groves, and the event is bringing the church and the community together to discuss and to understand the Windrush compensation scheme and status. There is representation on how to, how to understand the form, but more importantly, it's an international event where individual can join by Zoom. It's a hybrid event, and the event is promoted on the Eventbrite platform. So can I encourage people to share that information to friends outside the UK? If they cannot join in person tomorrow, please join on the Zoom platform. 45 Chestnut Grove, Balham Southwest 12, from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, in person. If not in person, on the Zoom platform. So that is our international Windrush engagement session.
Thank you so much. Keep recording these chats as well, please. So thank you very much indeed. So now I'm going to formally just wrap things. Christienna and Alex, just so grateful that you came along, that we've been in touch. Alex came to talk about his excellent book. Well, you say excellent, but you know, it's gut-wrenching. Blood Legacy, a really incredible, readable story of your own personal experience, Alex, and we very much appreciated that some time ago now on Black History Conversations. And Christienna, I'm sure we're going to be seeing you again, because you clearly have got a wealth of knowledge in your background, and I read up a little of your CV, and you've done all sorts of things. I just have to thank you too, both for coming here, but also for being part of what is a really, really significant piece of work that you have been involved in. And I thank you very much indeed. On behalf of the Black History Conversations team, and we've got Garrick here, we've got Rose here, we've got Vivian Crawford, we've got June Elizabeth White-Smith-Gully, who've been stalwarts in keeping us going and focused so that we can learn more. So just to let you know, Alex left put a message in the chat to say thanks so much to you all for your frankness and your wisdom. The Church of England's Church Commissioners need to hear all your views, and Christienna and I will pass on what we've heard, but please do write. There's a contact form on the website for the new fund, which is https://hrjfund.org/contact/ and that goes straight to the Commissioner's office. But we're very happy to give you that information again. And then just to say that Black History Conversations, what we've got coming up next week at the same time, 2 o'clock, same link. You can go to the current Black History Conversations website, which is just blackhistoryconversations.com, to get the link for this, or use the same one that you got. And Kurt Henry is just over a year ago joined the Jamaica Memory Bank as a director, so that should be fascinating to hear about that. The following week, just before Easter, David Gleave's going to lead a session where we're looking at good websites, and Historical Roots, which is a website he and his partner and others have set up, is really interesting, got a lot of good new information on. And we're also going to be talking about the Black History Black History Conversations website. So that'll be good. Then we have a very, very special session. My granddaughter is so thrilled. We've actually, after Easter, we start with a session with Atinuka. And if you don't know Atinuka, who's a Nigerian living in Wales, and her work, she's written so many children's books, and they are just excellent. She's written fiction for children, as well as stories of Africa, and her brilliant Black British history book is an absolute stunner. It's amazing. And if you haven't seen it, if you haven't got children or grandchildren, go and get it out the library for yourself anyway. It's a really, really good read. Then we've got Professor Celia Naylor. She's going to be telling the truth about Rose Hall, and her work is fascinating, because we can say what we like about academics, but they do some good stuff. Her website about telling the truth about Rose Hall is a really interesting way of sharing history, sharing information. And then we're going to have Professor Alan Lester, who actually joined us today, and he's going to be talking to us about a book that he's just about to publish later on this year, I think, October. The Truth About the Empire, the Real Histories of British Colonialisation. So, and a forward there from Satnam Sanghera, another great writer. So we just have to be very grateful that we've got such willing speakers of such excellence, and you're welcome to join us any Friday at 2 o'clock in the UK. Well, the steady time we keep to is 9 o'clock in Jamaica in the morning. So we stick to 9 o'clock in Jamaica in the morning. And then those of us in other parts of the world, when the hour changes, we just flex ourselves around. Now, last week we had a really good session, which is recorded and will be on our current website, blackhistoryconversations.com. That was Garrick Prayog. He did an update on the achievements of Justice for the Windrush Generations. And I have to add the frustrations as well. And the week before that, we had Professor Sherko Gill, who's been doing some really interesting work on the UNESCO Slave Route Project's Collective Healing Initiative. So we really get to quite some interesting places. And the week before that, I'm not going to go back too far, but Reverend Dr. Devon Dick joined us from Jamaica. He was introduced by Dr. Vivian Crawford, and he spoke about the church and enslavement in Jamaica. So that was a very interesting presentation as well. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a feel of some of the things that we've done in the past. And I would like, whoever of you would like to pass this on to Dr. Toyin Agbetu. Thank you very much for passing on to all of you, because it meant that we had the most amazing turnout today, a turnout like we've never had before on Black History Conversations. Also, thanks ever so much to whoever it was who said thank you to us, and that was really nice, thank you, because we've kept going because it's important, isn't it? Okay then, so lots more things on the chat that I haven't caught up yet. So right, okay then, we'll share that with you all if you've let us have your email address. If you haven't had us let us have your email address, can you fill it in just now? I'll give you time before I switch off the end of the recording. But thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed.
And thank you, Liz. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Indomitable spirit.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, yes.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Ida.
Thank you.
We've got Cordelia there.
Thank you, now, Liz.
Hello.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody. One love.
Wangari,
Have a nice
Jolly good.
Mother's Day, every
Yes,
lady on the
thank
platform.
you.
Happy
Springer,
Mother's
thank
Day
you.
for Sunday.
Maureen, great that you joined us. Wayne, that was lovely.
Happy
Philip,
Mother's Day.
Oh, happy, yeah,
Take
Women's
care.
Day. Yes, we didn't say that.
Mothers, grandmothers, sisters, all together. Yeah.
Aunties.
Everybody.
Happy Women's Day.
Yeah.
Happy Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yes,
Indeed.
yes,
And
exactly.
Greetings
happy
to Herman. I don't know
men.
how you like that little thing, but it's jolly good.
Yeah.
Hamon, greetings. Sister Yar, greetings. It's good seeing
Brother
you all
Glenroy,
here.
good to see you.
And PJ. Yeah, good. You can turn your mics off now and just have a little chat. Wayne, lovely. That was great. Thank you.
Thank
Where have you
you.
joined us from, Wayne?
I'll be
I
at
will
the
leave it
next
to you
one. Just
guys.
keep me
Take care.
posted.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Glenroy,
bye,
take care.
Glenroy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else who wants to just take your mic off and just speak, you're welcome to.
I'm gonna post my
lovely.
cards.
You're going to post your cards. Okay.
And then I forgot.
Yeah,
You
just
make me
say-
forget to put the stamp them on him. I
Oh,
forgot back to the car.
it'd be cheaper to take it because post is expensive now.
I
Take it
know.
there.
I know. You're right.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
One love, eh?
Thank you, Wangari.
Take care.
Bye.
Andrew.
Bye.
Thank you,
Vivian, I've
Amon,
sent you
again.
a separate note, Vivian, if
Gone.
you get a chance. So he's
Okay,
gone.
thank you, Joy. Thank you, Everton.
Right.
Thank you, Kim.
And
Sam,
you're,
that was lovely.
yeah.
Barrington.
And Liz, you're completely better now. Everything's all right.
Well, I have got this big bump on the back of my head still. But my black eye's gone. And for those of you who don't know, I managed to trip over and land flat on my face. Bit of a while ago, but I do feel better now. Yes, it's good.
I'm
Right,
stopping the
anyone else
recording now,
ready
Liz.
to
I
go?
just stopped the recording.
You have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
it doesn't
lovely
say
to see
you've stopped
everybody.
it on mine.